I could feel the chilly October air as I was walking home from school on a Friday afternoon. I didn't have any plans for the day. I was just gonna get home and catch up on some schoolwork. Afterwards, I would hop on Call of Duty with some of my friends. As soon as I entered my backyard, I realized that my parents' car was not there, so I assumed there was nobody home. I called them to make sure. Once both of them answered, they told me they were still at work and that they were working late. Since I forgot my keys inside the house, I entered through my grandma's house. In order to understand the story, you have to understand the layout of my house. I live in a two-family house. The upstairs portion is where I live with my parents, and my grandma lives in the downstairs portion. Luckily, my grandma was home, so that's how I was able to enter through her house. Once inside, I made myself some microwavable pizza and sat down watching some TV. I was too lazy to start homework, so instead I put on a scary movie since it was October after all. I must have been about halfway through the Blair Witch when I heard the phone ringing. I looked down and I saw Grandma. I was confused at why she was calling me, but I picked up anyway. Hello? Hi, can you come downstairs and help me carry something? I was a little annoyed, but I agreed and hung up the phone. The downstairs and upstairs are connected with an inside hallway. This is the hallway that either my grandma or my parents and I can use to go from the downstairs area to the upstairs. As I entered the living room, my grandma was just standing there, staring at me. She did not move a single inch. This creeped me out, not because of her, but because I just watched a horror movie. That was when she said, "Were you the one running around my house?" She asked in a confused and surprised way. No, I stuttered. At this point, I didn't know what to say. She continued, "I just saw a little boy running from my living room to my bathroom." Before anything else, I quickly started looking throughout the entire house in case someone broke into my grandma's house. But as expected, I did not find anyone. She later explained that she thought that the little child that was running around her house was me, and that I was messing around in her house. The rest of the day, nothing else happened. To this day, my grandma swears that she saw a little kid running throughout her house, but I have never been able to find out what actually happened that day. This happened to me on Halloween night, and I have spent the past week trying to figure out an explanation for it. I seriously doubt this is a prank my close friends pulled, as their immediate reactions were just as confused and spooked as I was. Not to mention I am sure they would have told me by now, and not have dragged it out this long. On Saturday, I went out downtown to hit a few bars with a good friend. It was an unusually chilly night, even for late October. But seeing people dressed up out and about in what felt a relatively normal weekend for a change in our new COVID world was exciting in and of itself. After stopping at one place and not really feeling the vibe, we decided to hit a familiar spot not too far away to sit down for more drinks. Through a few conversations with tipsy strangers in and around the bar, the night truly brought back that certain nostalgic feeling particular to Halloween. The feeling of innocent fun, contrasted with the creeping suspicion lingering at the back of your mind that you are amongst darker forces at play. While awaiting entry into the bar, my friend and I were confronted by a masked man who abruptly reached into his pocket while aggressively approaching us. In a split second that seemed to drag on for an eternity, he pulled out a plastic katana and mimicked stabbing and slashing movements. Grasping what had just happened, we all laughed it off and admitted that he had gotten us pretty good. Eerily, I would go on to find out that minutes apart from this incident, a disguised man had gone out with a samurai sword in Quebec City, a city a few hours away, and killed 2 randomly chosen victims. Inside this bar, my friend and I went on to spend the next while drinking, talking, and overall just having a great time. Not having any set plans for after the bar, I was in touch with a few friends to potentially meet up after. As we left buzzed, we stopped for a quick smoke and observed some of the groups in our vicinity. Being in a pretty eventful area, one with plenty of student housing and bars, we were open to spontaneously join a group and see where the night went. Standing near a train station, we were soon approached by 2 girls, both also, by the looks of it, searching for something to do. Getting a tad preoccupied in my conversation with one of them, I soon realized I missed a couple calls from another friend looking to meet up later in the night. The girl, a rowdy character to put it lightly, went on to pick up one of the calls on my behalf and go on a tirade of obscenities, something that only added to my friend's great confusion at the moment. Eventually, I separated from the girls and decided to contact friend number 2 that had called me earlier. At this point, friend number 1, who I had been hanging out with at the bars, had decided to call it a night and head home. I called an Uber and we soon met up close to his place. Visibly disturbed, he asked me what had gone on, half jokingly, even if I had experienced a schizophrenic episode or something of that sort. Laughing, I explained to him that one of the 2 random girls we had bumped into picked up one of his phone calls. The expression on his face, however, did not change. "Dude, listen to your voicemail," he told me as he played a recording. Chills swept through my body as I heard a high-pitched voice, likely one of the younger boy, read out a voicemail greeting. "Hey, this is, I'm not here at the moment, so please leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks." Struggling to make sense of the situation, I froze in my tracks. I asked my friend if this was some sort of prank, and they swore it had nothing to do with it. I messaged my brother asking him to call my number to see if he hears the same recording, only to receive a "what the fuck" text in reply. I did not recognize the voice whatsoever. Who is it? How did they get access to my voicemail? What is the purpose of this? None of it made sense. What was perhaps the most unsettling, however, is that the young child had said my first name. It would be one thing if the message was purely expletive, or something horribly offensive, which could be explained as a typical troll tier prank, or even someone else's name, in which case, while still very odd, maybe it could be said to be a crazy glitch on a network provider's end. But it was my name, read out by a mysterious young boy. I do not know how long this voicemail recording had been up, but the fact that it was discovered on Halloween made it all the more chilling. I have since changed my voicemail, of course, but I've listened to the recording countless times. The fact that for this change to be made through my phone, I would have to be 1, completely away in possession of my phone for a considerably period of time, which is very rare. 2, the individual behind this would have to be able to unlock my phone. And 3, know the password to my voicemail menu makes this situation all the more puzzling. I have looked into voicemail hacking through phone number spoofing, but I am still unable to explain what the motive behind such a message would be. This has troubled me for the past week, and I have come no closer to understanding any of it. I hope someone here can help me. "You sure you have all the rules memorized?" my boss said as he gathered his belongings to go home. "Yeah, sure thing, I got them all up here," I said as I pointed to my head. He gave me a nod and headed out the door of the small office to go home. My boss was a little off, to say the least. This was my first month as a security guard at a cemetery, right around the corner from my residence, and I had just gotten out of college about 3 months ago. The last month of shifts have been boring, sitting around, checking cameras, and doing rounds through the cemetery, making sure nothing is out of order. Exciting, right? I needed a source of income, and this was the best paying job I could find. No real experience needed, the flyer said. My take was that they were desperate to find someone fast, so I took advantage of that. I was hired the day that I found a flyer, over the phone. I never even found out the guy's name. Once I came in on my first day, my boss gave me no training, no do's and don'ts, just a verbal list of 9 rules I had to follow and memorize before Halloween night. "These rules are to be followed only on Halloween night," he said. "You must follow these rules to the exact way they are told to you. If you mess up even a small part, well, you won't mess up, because I trust you to follow them word for word." I looked at him, confused, because this sounded almost like a threat. Nevertheless, I pulled out my phone and started an audio recording so that he could record the list. Once he finished telling me the rules, I was in absolute disbelief. This guy is insane. No wonder why no one wants to work here. This guy is actually insane, I thought to myself. I know every place has certain rules to follow, but to designate a set of rules, insane rules, for Halloween night only? I guess you won't know how I felt until I tell you the rules that he gave me, word for word, exactly how he told me, straight from the recording. Rule number 1. On Halloween night, please arrive at 8:30 p.m. No earlier, no later. Do not walk in these doors until it reaches 8:30. For the love of God, please. Rule number 2. Stay inside the office until 9:15. Do not leave. Keep yourself occupied, but do not check the security cameras during this time. I'll make sure to turn them off before you get there, so there is no temptation to peek at them. This might be one of the most important rules. If the monitor turns on by itself, do not look either. If for some reason you look and you see it has revealed the A section of the cemetery, you must turn off the lights of the office and hide. If it reveals the B or C section and you look at it, your only option is to run. Good luck with this. To make this easier, just cover the monitor with a jacket or blanket, because you will not want to see what happens out there this time on Halloween night. Rule number 3. After 9:15 strikes, you will have 30 seconds to get out of the office. Leave the door unlocked. It is possible you will pass an unnaturally tall figure with no facial features. This is not a Halloween costume, and you must tell him good evening and look him right where his eyes would be. If he doesn't respond, continue on your way to patrol the cemetery. If he says anything at all, you must stand completely still. Do not move a muscle. He might walk around you, but if you keep still until he's done, he should walk away with no problem. Go into the office and slam the door behind him. Rule number 4. You will make your way to Section A. Once you inspect Section A, you will realize the gravestone titled James R. Hackney is being dug up completely. This is not out of the ordinary. Do not, and I mean do not, pay any attention to what is inside the 6-foot hole in the ground. You will not see the rest of your shift if you look down in that hole. Just keep walking to Section B and do not look back. Rule number 5. As soon as you cross the bridge from Section A to B, you will notice about a dozen shadow-like figures standing around in a circle around a big oak tree to the left of the bridge. Please listen closely to what I'm about to say. You must find a figure wearing the black top hat. You will walk up behind him and ask, "Am I clear?" If you hear a voice from inside your head say, "Continue," then you can carry on to Section B. If you don't hear anything, you must wait. You can look over to the section at this time, but I recommend keeping your eyes down. Trust me, there will be no physical harm to you if you look, but I can't promise you will be emotionally intact after looking. Rule number 6. Once you get the go-ahead, continue out to Section B. You may walk around and do what you would normally do every night here. The only catch is you must stay in this section until 10. It should be around 9:30 to 9:45 by now, so you won't have to wait long. After the time crosses 10, continue on. Rule number 7. After walking out of Section B, you will notice a strange temperature change and lighting change. The time will have jumped to 2 a.m. after crossing. Do not panic, and please do not answer your phone. Your phone will be ringing constantly. As soon as it starts ringing, you will stand still and not move until it stops. It will be calls from your mother, father, siblings, girlfriend, boyfriend, anything you can think of. You must not answer these calls. It is not actually them calling. It is in fact the man that you saw earlier, the one with no facial features. He's trying to lure you back to the office. You must stay away from the office until I tell you to go back. Your phone will stop ringing after about a half hour, which leaves you at around 2:30 a.m. You can continue on at this point. Rule number 8. You will notice another time jump, this one 2 more hours, from 2:30 to 4:30. If the time still says 2:30 after the calls stop, you are in trouble. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do here. You messed up at a step at some point if you end up here. You can finally finish your inspection of Section C. You must be prepared for a woman covered in blood to run up to you begging for help. She will be asking you where her baby is, and if you can come fast to help her. Do not be startled, no matter how loud she yells. Tell her you will meet her outside the cemetery in 10 minutes, for her to wait there. She will run off in the opposite direction, and that's how you know you succeeded. There will be a lot of towels and rags all over the ground, covered in blood around Section C. This is the only maintenance you will have to do. Just pick them up and dispose of them in the waste bin closest to you. Rule number 9. After completing the final task, you must run back to your office. Do not look anywhere but ahead of you. You will see figures everywhere. You will hear your name being called from voices that you think you recognize. Just keep running. Once you reach the office, you will see the faceless man leaving the office building. It should be 5 a.m. at this point. He will stop you and either say good work and nod at you, and you will slowly walk into the office and close the door. For the remainder of the shift, you can check the cameras, sit down, and go on with your shift until I come inside to start my shift. Or, he would say, come with me. If he says come with me, you will run and lock yourself in your office. Do not fall for his calm monotone voice. He is anything but calm if you mess with him. Do not let him in, and wait for him to stop banging on the door. Once this stops, cover your eyes for the last hour of your shift. Do not look around until you hear 3 knocks on the door. This will be me to relieve you of your shift. You won't be called in for a few weeks to come to terms with what you have seen, and you will be paid a handsome amount of money for your duties. Now that you have listened to the rules as well, I hope you can understand my initial suspicion and why I was so baffled. I thought this was a joke until I finished my shift. After my boss left at 9:30, I decided I was going to just follow the rules given to me, to humble him and to be a good sport of the prank. I didn't check the cameras, and I headed out the door. After going outside, the brisk fall air hit me, and I saw a tall man walking up to me. I looked at him, and he was actually faceless. It looked so real, and kinda gave me the creeps. I almost forgot to tell him good evening. He looked at me, well I think he did, and continued on through the door. I shivered a little, as I headed on straight to Section A. I arrived at the entrance, and I searched for James R. Hackney's grave, a grave I always saw, as it was the biggest one there. To my disbelief, it was actually being dug up. I felt sick to my stomach, as they would go this far to scare me, so I hurried past the grave, as a wave of uneasiness came over me. This can't be real. I reassured myself as I headed across the bridge to Section B. I scanned for the oak tree, and when I finally found it, I noticed the figures my boss warned me about. I instantly spotted the one with the top hat. I unsteadily scurried over to him and asked, "Am I clear?" No answer. As I stood there waiting for an answer that never came, I decided to look away from the man and peek over to Section B, because surely the pranksters wanted me to look, since they warned me against it. I froze and felt pins and needles in my hands as I saw myself standing there in the distance. At least what looked like me, except I was taller and covered in blood. As the figure that presumably was me stared back, it let out a screech and started running towards me. I was startled and absolutely mortified by this and turned around to run. I looked back, and as it reached its arms out, it completely vanished. As soon as it vanished, I heard a voice from inside my head say continue. At this point, I had a million thoughts running through my head as I started to realize that whatever was happening was somehow impossibly real, and it felt my mind switch from confused to defensive. I inspected the area until 10 p.m., constantly looking over my shoulder. I checked my phone and saw it was time to move on to Section 3. I felt exactly what I was told, a temperature change, and saw the surroundings get just a little bit darker. It was noticeably colder. No way, I told myself as I reached for my phone, which displayed 2 a.m. Before I could form another thought, my phone rang right on cue, and stopped dead in my tracks. Dad, the phone displayed. I stared back at the phone. As I looked at those 3 letters, I never knew my dad, and definitely never had him saved in my phone. I felt a tear form in my eye, because this was a very sensitive topic for me. I let it ring as I got lost in a trance of thinking about how on earth any of this was even possible. The ringing finally stopped, and I let out a sigh of relief. I remembered the next rule about the time, and opened my phone again, 2:30. I kept moving on with some stray tears in my eyes, watching my phone turn from 2:30 to 4:30. This was a relief to me, because now that I knew this was somehow real, I realized I've done all the steps right to this so far. As I started inspecting Section 3 with cold fingers and numb toes, I heard screaming. Naturally, this scared the hell out of me, and I jumped out of my shoes. I snapped my head around to a blood-covered woman screaming, "My baby! I can't find my baby." I told her, after a bit of hesitation, to meet me at the entrance of the cemetery in 10 minutes. She nodded and ran off, and I noticed a ton of blood-covered rags all over the ground. Shaken up by her screams, I slowly picked up the rags, threw them out. I looked around and ran back to the office. The whole run, I didn't see anyone and didn't hear anything, which was weird because my boss said that otherwise. I'll count my blessings here though, and find myself in front of the office finally. The man was leaving. This time I looked at him in complete terror, as he turned my way and said, "Come with me." I wasted no time running past him, into the office and slamming the door behind me. What did I mess up? I yelled over the sound of banging on the door as I pulled a jacket over my head. I shivered in fear for the entire hour until I heard 3 knocks on the door. I shot up, threw the door open and yelled, "What the hell did you just put me through?" I was mad, all the relief to see him, who looked a lot more colorful and lifelike than he was in the past. He looked at me and smiled at me. "Go home, kid. Get some sleep." I yelled back, "No, I want answers. You cannot just tell me to go after the night I just had." He looked at me and said, "You took care of my cemetery, kid. I thank you for that." He held out his hand for a handshake. "The name's James Ryan Hackney, and I have been dead for 200 years. Every Halloween, I leave the cemetery and recharge so my physical body does not perish. You covered me last night, and I thank you for that." It didn't take me long to recognize his name as the same on the gravestone that was dug up. I stared back at him, mouth wide open, speechless. I walked out the door, packed my house up, and never came back to this town again.